Madam Josephine, Dr. Anil Kumar, I note the presence of Professor Hari Kumar over there, colleagues and students. I think we are going to have a faculty seminar presentation on a very important topic, and there is all those who are involved are very much close to the gift community and gift family, and a kind of a formal welcome which is written in the notice. It should be taken as a job of the coordinator rather than it means anything beyond that. But I think a special welcome may be given to Madam Josephine. I think you are formally coming for the first time, and Professor Harilal very often he is with us. He is very much involved, and in fact, this work itself is initiated as per the advice of Professor Harilal, which he doesn't remember. So that is precisely why they suggested that we should get Professor Harilal's convenience for organizing this seminar. And I'm very happy that Dr. Anil Kumar joined. He is now in Kutikanam, very busy with the organization of the Kerala Padana Congress, which is going to happen tomorrow and day after onwards. That has taken him to Kutikanam. Um, so we are very happy that Professor Harlal joined. In fact, it's slightly hectic schedule these days. I think that he's also traveling a lot across different local LSGs. And Josephine, thank you very much. Uh, mm, he's missed. Okay, Dr. Anil, he is, we welcome all three of them very much and all to the colleagues. There's no need of that. So let me just ask now Professor Harilal to chair the session and conduct the proceeding of a study which he wanted us to do.
Friends. In fact, the moderator's job is very simple because we have two very good discussants who are practically working with centrally sponsored programs as planners. Both of them have worked on centrally sponsored programs, apart from managing the centrally sponsored programs in Kerala. This topic is important from different points of view, not only from the point of view of center-state relations. Each of these centrally sponsored programs are very important programs in their own right in their areas. And they should be studied that way, the kind of impact they are having in their particular area. But now this presentation is from the point of view of center-state relations, fiscal federalism in the country. When we discuss generally about fiscal federalism, we don't really get into a discussion of centrally sponsored programs. We generally discuss the sharing of central government tax, and then we also get into a discussion of the credits. I mean the debt side. I mean the borrowing side, but not much on centrally sponsored programs. And this is one way of distributing centers' resources across states, and this should be discussed. And I am very optimistic that this particular angle is looked into, and we will be able to know through the presentation how different states are treated differently. And then, of course, the much discussed problem of centrally sponsored programs. Now, they are all prepared for the country as a whole, and the suitability of these centrally sponsored programs and their norms, they don't really fit in well with all the states. So all those problems are there. Some of them are very familiar, and maybe this paper is finding out some new ground also. So we are all very keen to listen to you. Looking forward to this presentation, and of course, towards the discussion from Josephine and Anil. In fact, no, Josephine, we have recently, the State Finance Commission has given some work to the decentralization division in the planning board. We requested them to do a study for the Finance Commission on centrally sponsored programs which are implemented through the local governments. Because now when you study the local government finance, this is also important. This is one major area of financing local governments. So that should also be discussed, and they have the data with them and they monitor implementation of centrally sponsored programs through the local government. So they are quite knowledgeable about these programs. So we requested them to do a study, and they have the data also, and they are planning to do work for us. This is all from me by way of introduction. So
Thank you, Professor Harilal, for setting up the tone, and also thanking Professor Joseph for his motivation. So basically, this is a work in progress seminar. We are trying to unravel the changing dimensions of the intergovernmental transfers and how the non-statutory grants have increased its dominance in the last 1 decade vis-a-vis the statutory grants, especially the centrally sponsored schemes. We can see we are going to present you how a bare number of, figures, and we are not, in fact, going much into the political economy dimensions of it. We are, in fact, planning to do it as a second seminar. Also specifically on center sector schemes also. But here we are trying to look at from the point of view of centrally sponsored schemes, how the numbers have changed, how the numbers vis-a-vis the centrally sponsored schemes at all have increased, but then how the allocations have drastically come down. We will also be looking at a state-weight analysis also, and how some states are at the fag end of the process. So we are also trying to provide the gap between how the allocations vis-a-vis utilization is there, especially for states like Kerala, by looking at a per capita kind of thing. Then we are also, as the chairman pointed out, the question of one size, whether it fits for all. And we are also trying to put before you the question of the tied nature of many of these schemes. So with this small introduction, let me hand over to Sumalada for a detailed, take on this.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So thank you, Nirmal, for the introduction. So I'm continue from there. So the idea of this presentation is to give you the kind of structure of the tied and untied grants. So our focus is more on the tied grants, basically focusing on the centrally sponsored schemes. So I'm moving into the some of the important literature which is there in the the literature studies which are there in the literature, looking at various aspects of the transfers, including the general purpose and specific purpose transfers. So we have plenty of studies already there, which discusses about the need for intergovernmental transfers to the subnational governments from the point of view of the fiscal inequalities that exist between the governments and within the governments. And one of the important paper which I found is the Bird and Smart, which explains about the role of intergovernmental transfers for the revenue mobilization of the states. And you can also see several studies, conceptual studies, which explains the type of transfers, basically the grants, transfers including the tax devolution as well as the grants. So there are two types, that is general purpose transfers as well as the specific purpose transfers. General purpose transfers basically includes the tax devolution and the finance commission grants, and specific purpose transfers are basically the tied grants which are given by the union governments to the state governments. So its merits, demerits, and its impact on various aspects of state finances are discussed in various literature. And important literature I quoted here by Govinda Rao's paper 2017, which is submitted to the Nidhi Aayog, and then followed by many other studies. And also there are, in the state distribution of budget. This is a very old paper written by Gurati and George, KK George in 1978. So when I presented last time in the Finance Commission grants in our workshop on Assistant the Finance Commissions, where Professor Isaac actually asked me to continue, follow this paper, this Gulati, and update this paper from the totality perspectives, the transfers and grants, and into the components of various grants and the statutory as well as non-statutory grants. From there, that the study motivation started. And also there are, several empirical studies on the factors influencing discretionary transfers, like political, economical factors that determines, the transfers to various states and their impact on the state finances. And there are some studies talks about the constitutional aspects, like changing amendments and particularly the grants in aid and related aspects. And when it comes to the centrally sponsored schemes, we have literature covering the implementation issues, and you have studies by Saxena, Das, and Mitra, and also the need for untied grants. Like there are issues with the tied grants which are tied in nature, so they cannot use for different purposes. It meant for single purposes, so there is a need for untied grants transfers to the states, and also centralization of social sector policies and schemes. The one of the paper that which I referred is our discussants paper, and they also talk about the structure of the centrally sponsored schemes, and more it is more focused on the state Kerala state kind of data, and the restructuring of centrally sponsored schemes. There are some studies, not many, and very recent one is the Assistant Finance Commission, part of Assistant Finance Commission published in EPW by Pinaki Chakravarti. They have done from the aspects of the centrally sponsored schemes for the state and concurrent lists, like how it is allocated for the state, the aspects covered in the state list as well as the concurrent list. That is also very important work. And then the declining share of CSS, some of the studies. And given this, having said the existing studies, so in this paper, we are focusing, we have two sessions. One is statutory and non-statutory grants. The first session we'll be explaining about this, and then the second section is about the centrally sponsored schemes. So we'll be looking into the various aspects of the composition and structure of centrally sponsored schemes. So before getting into this, and let me briefly explain the data sources that we have used in this study. So we have used budget at a glance union budget. Basically, we have taken the statutory and the components of statutory and non-statutory grants. We have taken from here, and the expenditure data, that union total expenditure data as well as the CSS data has been taken from expenditure profile of union budget, and in detail it is given in the expenditure profile, and specific to the state data, because finance accounts data gives only the actual data regarding all these aspects. So in order to get the budgeted data, we have used the budget in brief for Kerala data, as well as the budget volume and budget publications of the government of Karnataka and Tamil Nadu for their budgeted data. It has been taken from the finance department of the respective states, and finance accounts data is taken for the accounted data, CSS, how much is transferred to each state. And I have taken the GDP data from MOSPI. And then moving on to the totality of this transfer. So here the figure given is on the transfers from the union government to the states. It is given in the percentage. So we can see that the devolution is actually higher than the grants. So devolution, it comes to around 56% in 2001, and the grants in aid contribute around 44%. But when it comes to the latest period, you can see that the tax devolution, which is dipped in during the time of COVID 2020, that period actually grants in it surpassed the because more grants are being given to the states in order to spend for the COVID related aspects. So thereafter tax devolution increases, and grants in it, you can see for the last few years there is a decline. And moving on to the statutory and non-statutory, because our focus is not on the devolution, tax devolution part, focusing on the statutory and non-statutory grants. So let me briefly explain you what comprises statutory grants and non-statutory grants as per the union budget classification. So statutory grants is nothing but it is the Finance Commission grants. It's also known as non-plan grants. It includes post-devolution revenue deficit grants, grants for rural and urban local bodies, grants for health sector, grants for incubation of new cities, and grants for shared municipal services, grants in aid for SDRF, that is State Disaster Relief Fund, and grants in aid for the State Disaster Mitigation Fund. And also the latest one is the under Article 275 one of the Constitution. So it differs because this I have taken the latest composition. And when it comes to the non-statutory grants, so we can see that it is basically the assistance to the state from NDRF, external aided projects, then special assistance as loans to the states for capital expenditure, then special assistance under the demand transfers to the states, special assistance to the tribal area under demand, and centrally sponsored schemes, center sector schemes, and other categories of expenditure. So now moving on to the composition of FC grants and the non-statutory grants. Here I call statutory grants are FC grants, and then non-statutory grants. So into total grants. So we can see that the statutory grants actually declines from 4.8% to let's take the latest the account data 23-24 to 3.4 percentage. And in the latest budget it has even further decline is shown that to 2.6%, whereas the non-statutory grants increases to the this is actually in terms of the total expenditure, and it actually increases from 7.4% to 18.7%. So when it comes to the under the total grants, statutory and non-statutory grants, which actually you can see there is a opposite direction of curves, and FC grants constitutes around 17% of total grants from the union government to the state in 23-24, whereas non-statutory grants constitute a higher proportion, which comes around 83% during the same period. And it is important to note that FC grants actually declines from 40% in 2001 to 12.4% in 25-26 budget estimate. On the other hand, non-statutory grants have increased from 61% to 88% during the same period. So these non-statutory grants are the tied grants, and it cannot be used for different purposes. It can be used only for the purpose which is given. So moving on to the this is the growth which I have calculated. If you can see from this figure is that the average growth of FC grants has declined from 17.9% in 2010 period to 3.1% in 2020-25 period. Whereas the non-statutory grants have, there is a slight decline, that is 16.7% to 15.4%. To further, the latest period it has increased to 19.2%. So now I come to the centrally sponsored schemes. Before going into the data, let me try to briefly explain like what kind of changes had happened in these centrally sponsored schemes. So these schemes are basically designed and funded by the union government on subject in both the current and concurrent list, state and concurrent list. It is backed by the Article 282 of the Indian Constitution. So the state governments basically implement these schemes. And this is the first time introduced in the fourth plan with 188 schemes in 2002-3 to 147 schemes in 2011-12. Actually, the schemes, there were more schemes under this category in the earlier periods. And these schemes are mainly meant to address various issues, the development issues like poverty alleviation, rural development, primary sector growth, unemployment reduction, then programs for development of vulnerable groups. So we can see that from the 13th to 14th Finance Commission, the tax devolution has been increased from 32 to 42 percentage, and in that the union governments the expenditure of the union governments have gone up due to the increase in the devolution. So in the union budget 2015-16, they had restructured the non-statutory grants to the state in order to implement the increased devolution to the states. So after announcing the restructuring of grants in 2015-16 budget, the Government of India, through Nidhi Aayog, constituted a subgroup of chief ministers for further rationalizing and restructuring of centrally sponsored schemes, which happened in 2015. So based on their recommendations, the total schemes have been divided into two categories. One is core and second is optional schemes. Within core, there is a further category that is core of the core, which is actually, they say that it is it is meant for social protection and inclusion. And the subgroup also recommended a few things like the matching share between the union and state government on financing the centrally sponsored schemes. There is a change in that. That is for Northeastern and Himalayan states, the sharing ratio is 90 to 10 percentage. That is 90 percentage is covered by the union government and 10 percentage has to be contributed by these states. And for the other states other than the Northeastern and Himalayan states, the sharing ratio is 60 and 40. So 60 is by union government and 40 is by the respective state governments. So in the case of optional schemes, sharing ratio between the union and state would be 80 to 20 for the special state, the Northeastern and Himalayan states, and for the general state, it is 50-50 for optional schemes, because if central pays 50%, state has to give the 50% of the financing. Then prior to this restructuring, the union government share for various schemes were 90%, 80%, and 70%. For some schemes, it was 90%, and for some schemes, 80%, and for some schemes, 75%. Rest 10%, 20%, and 25% were shared by the financed by the state governments. And also the important issue discussed during that period was the number of schemes. So there were more schemes, and and it was very complicated to implement all these schemes, and there was not much kind of there were a lot of issues regarding the number of schemes, more number of schemes, and they have recommended it to reduce to the schemes at least to 30 schemes in this 2015-16 budget, union budget. The recommendation given by the subgroup of chief ministers that was held in 2015. And also the suggestion was to keep all these schemes under the umbrella schemes. So these were the suggestions, and the budget 2016-17 union budget, they had umbrella scheme of 28. 28 total schemes, which had 6 core of the core and 19 core and 3 optional schemes. So we have actually done a small exercise like the size of the CSS in terms of the expenditure and GDP, just to see how much is dispersed to the states. And if you look at this figure, actually, what happened was there was no separate earmarking available for CSS during 2015 and 16. I couldn't find CSS allocation. It was clubbed with the central assistance. So I have taken a period before and this to compare the data. So while the share of CSS to GDP for period 2000 to 1 to 2013 for if you take the average share, it was only 0.41 percentage, while the CSS to total expenditure was 2.68 percentage. This has this has increased to the share of CSS to GDP has increased to 1.42 percentage, and CSS to total expenditure has increased to 10 percentage during the period 2015-16 to the latest data. So there is a increase in the CSS, both in the GDP as well as in the total expenditure. So a decline in the ratio of CSS to total expenditure is seen for the last few years. So that because we have not explored further on explaining this, it may be due to the increase in the central sector schemes. So we could see that, the funding for the central sector schemes have increased for the last some years. This could be the reason for this. So, yeah. So now I'm coming to the composition. I mean the CSS in the non-statutory. So how much is the size in terms of the non-statutory total non-statutory grants? So the proportion of CSS in non-statutory grants, we can see that it ranges between 35.4% and 31% for the period 2001 to 2013-14, with an average of 31.7% for the entire period. On the other hand, the next period, we can see that it ranges from 74.2 percentage to 55.4 percentage, with an average share of 67.9 percentage. That means this shows that during the post planning commission period, the share of CSS in total non-statutory grants have gone up from 31.7 percentage to 67.9 percentage, because prior to that we had the plan grants, so it has merged into, then after the like abolition of planning commission and with the Nidhi Aayog, so there are central plan schemes as well as the centrally sponsored schemes. So the plan funds have been merged into the central sector schemes as well as the centrally sponsored schemes. That is why this hike is there. And this have taken the growth, the same data for the same period, the growth rate in the CSS amount, the amount. You can see that prior to this 2015, 15 period, the growth actually declines from 14.3% to 11.9%. So now I'm coming to the composition of the centrally sponsored schemes. So in this table we have given the share of the core of the core schemes into total CSS as well as core schemes, and the growth rate also given for overall CSS. We can see that there is a if you see the core of the core schemes, you can see that it was in 2015-16 it was to 28.5 percentage, which has it has almost the same like 27 percentage, and in 1920 it has increased to 30 percentage, and 2021 as I have mentioned earlier also, CSS have because total grants have surpassed. That is because of COVID year, there were more disbursement of CSS, and further it has declined. So if you see the latest accounts data 22-23, it has declined to 25.4 percentage, while the share of core schemes, there is a increase in the core schemes in the total centrally sponsored schemes. And you can see that the only 30 below 30 percentage comes from the core of the core, and the remaining 70 percentage is goes for the core schemes. Here the problem is prior the restructuring, the central funding was more and state contribution was less, but after that the matching share has been increased for the state, that is 60-40. And this is actually one side centralization of schemes are happening, but the other side the burden is transferring to the states. So when it comes to 20%, for example 20% to 40 percentage, the share has been increased, then the double share for the state to fund for these schemes. So that is one important thing we have to refer from this. And then the coming to the schemes, if you look at the schemes nature in core of the core and core schemes, we can see that under core of the core, only 6 schemes are there. It's also known as umbrella schemes, like the major Mahatma Gandhi, MNRAGA and all comes under that. And then you have the number of core schemes, which has actually the entire purpose of restructuring CSS was to reduce the number of schemes. So they have actually reduced to 22 in 2015-16, and then further to, you can see up to 29-20, it has reduced up to 30. But from there, actually, there is an increase in the schemes, 44, 52, and 69. And now you can see 82 schemes are there under this core schemes. And also from 2023-24 onwards, there is a change because there is no classification of core of the core and core schemes. From there onwards, only the list of schemes and which are categorized under different ministries. Okay, so this table, because it's a big table, I'm not explaining. I'll just brief about these two tables. So we can see that the MNRAG, as I was telling, MNRAG and the National Social Assistance Program, these are the two major schemes under this core of the core schemes. And this core of the core scheme is fully funded by the union government. In the case of core scheme, as I mentioned, the sharing based on the matching share between the state and union, mainly the 60 and 40 range. And yeah, so I'll just brief about the various departments, the major share of various departments. We can see that the Department of Rural Development, which spends around 33 percentage of total CSS, and which is followed by the Department of School Education and Literacy, 9.7 percentage each, and the Department of Health and Family Welfare, again 9.7 percentage. And the Department of Housing and Urban Affairs, 8.6 percentage. So if you take all these five departments together, it spends around 85 percentage of total CSS. These five department spends. And yeah, so now I'm coming to the states, like how, each states, the share to each states, like how much CSS is coming to different states. So here I've given the average share of CSS to the states in percentage for these two period. Yeah. So we can see that there is a decline in the CSS share to most of the states except Bihar, Jharkhand, and Uttar Pradesh. And for Kerala, there is a decline in the share from 3.8 percentage to 1.9 percentage during this given period. The because it is not meaningful to compare the state share because state size also differs. So I have taken the per capita CSS to states. Uh, Here we can see that. The states such as Kerala, Haryana, and Punjab, they have the lowest per capita CSS compared to other states. Though the share has increased over time, because this demonstrate the lower amount. And if you look at, on the other hand, the states like Odisha. Uh, Sorry, okay, wait a minute. Yeah, on the other hand, the states like Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Tamil Nadu, they have a higher, relatively higher, the per capita CSS. There is a decline in the per capita CSS for Karnataka in 2017-18, and yeah, from 2017-18 to 2023-24. So, so I think I made a mistake there. Yeah. So, see the now what bothered us is to see the differences in the actual and budgeted data, like because the budgeted data is not available in the finance account, so we have taken from which I explained already the budget documents of these states. So this table is about the Kerala, like actual and budget, how much is the difference. So if you look at the third column is given as the differences in actual and the budgeted, you can see that uh, only like if you take the average for the entire period, it comes around, the 45, around 50 percentage of the actual realization of the CSS compared to the budget. And because we know that the problem with CSS is one size fit for all, because there are some schemes are given by the union government, and it is not, like designed based on the state requirements or the needs. So all states may not require all schemes, because some states, as we know that they like southern, some of the states, developed states, so they are in the different development needs. So they may need some schemes which are used for them. So that may be one of the reasons. So we want to compare with at least some of the neighboring states. So we have taken Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. In this, if you look at the Karnataka case, you can see that because some year, you have a higher, because some years they got more than what they budgeted. So that is why that negative comes. But if you take on an average for this entire period, we can see that it is almost coming 90 percentage that realization, okay, of what they have budgeted. The actually comes under 90 percentage of what they budgeted in their budget. And for Tamil Nadu, if you look at similarly, Tamil Nadu is also higher, more compared to the Kerala. So because we don't have any answers for it, but we are just posing some question like why this difference is happening. Like what is the problem? Like is it because of the one size fit for all, or something to do with the schemes which we take, or like we really don't know, because maybe we can get some insights from the discussants and further look into details of it. Oh, here, because this analysis is actually motivated by this Anil Kumar's their paper, because I have also just cross-checked this analysis. Here in this table, the budget outlay of centrally sponsored schemes for the only one period, that is 24-25, is given, which is in the lakhs. So some schemes have taken these listed schemes, and for these schemes, prior to this restructuring, the the matching share was for the first scheme, it was fully funded by the union government. For other schemes, it was 75-25, and one scheme, integrated child protection scheme, it is 90-10, and other schemes, it is 75-25. And now the ratio is 60-40 for all these schemes. Uh, uh, Sorry, the first one is it is a mistake, because it is fully funded by the union government. So it's no matching share is coming, but now that scheme has been arranged in the 60-40. And if you look at the uh, fourth and fifth column, this is state share in new ratio and state share in the old ratio, because states spend this much amount when it comes to the new ratio. Actually, they would have spent only less. For example, 33,616 lakhs would have been spent if it is in the earlier ratio, but it has actually doubled because the matching ratio have been increased for the states. So this may not be only the case of Kerala, but this will be for other states as well, because matching states have been increased for other states also, because those who are taking these schemes, so they also will have a burden from the states for the state side. So now I'm coming to the conclusion. So we can conclude with some of the inferences. So there is a considerable increase in the non-statutory grants and decline in FC grants as per the data, and the decline in CSS share after the abolition of planning commission, and increase because decline has been seen for some years, maybe because I haven't looked at the center sector schemes data, but I feel that it may be due to the increase in the share for the center sector schemes. And the core of the core schemes constitutes below 30% of the total CSS amount, and remaining comes to this core schemes. The increasing core schemes put burden on the states. One hand, the centralization of the schemes are happening, but other side, they are putting more burden on the states. It also affects state finances, state positions. So as a structural change and kind of change happened in the year 22-23 by increasing the number of CSS scheme to 75, with the discontinuation of core of the core and core categorization of schemes, which is actually going back to the older structure, because the entire aim was to reduce the number, but the number actually increases. So the purpose has been, kind of things. And there is a decline in the CSS share to most of the state, as I explained, Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh, and for Kerala, it has been, it has seen as there is a decline, and for some states, there is an increase also, and the budgeted and actual, there is a gap between budgeted and actual receipts of CSS, especially to Kerala, and so what we feel that there should be a kind of regular monitoring of CSS, and also there should be coordination between the department, because it comes under various departments. So how much each department is getting, and what kind of schemes they are they proposed, and what kind of schemes they are getting, and what are the uses of those schemes for the state. So those kind of some kind of coordination has to be there to get the complete picture of what is happening with the CSS to the state, especially for our state. And ensuring the flexibility in the implementation of CSS by considering the need and requirement of state is an important step, because now it is not fully funded by the union government. So there is a matching share, and share has been increased to state, and state has the the kind of they have the power to ask for a kind of the flexibility in the states, and states should get the freedom to utilize CSS funds considering regional disparities and diverse needs. So with this, I stop here, and thank you.
But now, while introducing, Nirmal Roy took an advance bail, a very clandestine bail. I don't know how many people noted it. He told that there is another thing coming. Political economy of the whole theme will be taken up in a later paper. That means a lot of analytical questions that may have to be posed are not posed here in this first version of the paper, and those questions probably will be asked later. But I think the people here now, they are not going to leave you to take up those analytical questions for a new paper, because the data, in fact, raises questions. If you read between the lines, there are questions there, and those questions will have to be probably addressed in the first paper itself. At least many of those questions will have to be posed and discussed. Anyway, let us see how our audience will be picking up those issues. We before that, we will request discussants to give their views. Do we have a time thing? Like Josephine can speak for long, because she was my colleague, so
You can speak as long as you want, so long as you don't exceed more than 10 minutes.
So 10 minutes.
So we aim
So
to
the
complete it
director
by
is suggesting
5:30.
10 minutes. So Anil can also, Dr.
Take
Anil
10
can also speak for 10 minutes.
Yes, only Ganesh can come.
So Josephine first, and then Dr. Anil, and then after that it will be open to the floor.
Can I start? Honorable Commission of Finance Commission, State Finance Commission, Honorable Adlal sir, and Joseph sir, and dear professors of this institution, and the students. See, as we all know, the financial relationship between the union government and the states is now becoming more complex. In Kerala's context, this relationship is especially important given states' high social development needs and relatively limited revenue base. And in the post-planning commission era, the structure of union-state fiscal relations has also changed. And Niti Aayog, unlike its predecessor, does not allocate funds. Earlier, the states used to present our budgets there, and the planning commission had a key role in the allocation of funds also, especially in centrally sponsored schemes. Instead, now non-finance commission grants now come as scheme-based transfers, and they are determined by various central ministries only now. And there is a special arrangement like project appraisal committee, all those things. And only the projects which are placed there get some funding, and the sectors are not viewed in a comprehensive manner. Whatever projects the state presents there is getting approved, or in a selected way it gets approved. But the no, the sectors, development sectors are not taken in that viewpoint. Point is that the state's ability to influence these transfers is limited now, especially when they come with conditions that reduce fiscal flexibility. They come with conditions only. All these funding comes with conditions, most of the CSS schemes. Another critical issue is the increasing use of cess and surcharges by the union government, which are excluded from the divisible tax pool shared with the states. That is one area which is blank, where the state has no claim on that. Now cess and surcharges are increasing. We have only dependence on this thing, centrally sponsored schemes, and the centrally sponsored schemes are of this nature also. This reduces state share in central revenues, despite our state contributing substantially to tax collections through GST and other mechanisms also. Another issue is that centrally sponsored schemes are now often tied to conditionalities and dominate even in areas constitutionally assigned to states, that is like housing, health, education, agriculture, even agriculture also. So co-financing such schemes strains states' limited resources and restricts autonomy. That is one major issue now state is facing. Also, the net borrowing ceiling arbitrarily imposed by the state center has brought the state to the brink of a financial crisis also. We cannot borrow as much as we require even to fund the developing sectors, which has to be addressed immediately or urgently like that. We have no flexibility in that also, in the case of borrowing also. So these are the grave issues the state is raising for last many years. We know that we have even went to the court, Supreme Court, for some jurisdiction on that event. That is a rare case, what is happening now. Hence, this is a timely, your research paper is a timely and well-researched one, where it is quite relevant also, which explores the implications of union to state fiscal transfers in India, with a specific focus on shift from statutory to non-statutory or discretionary grants in the post-planning commission era. The study is very relevant, and I appreciate the team also here. And the study critically analyzes the centralization of centrally sponsored schemes, their impact on state autonomy, and the efficiency of resource allocation with a comparative lens on states like Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. And also it is data driven also to demonstrate shifts in fiscal transfers. Then also by contrasting Kerala with other southern states, it shows real fiscal asymmetries and performance gaps in CSS realization also. The paper highlights the erosion of cooperative federalism, increased fiscal burden on states, and challenges with the one-size-fits-all model of CSS. And I'm summarizing what is seen in your paper. What is revealed is that there is an increase in non-statutory transfers from the union government to the states. That's one thing. Then CSS constitute the largest share of these non-statutory grants. Then there have been structural changes in CSS, which I would like to highlight here. Then the per capita allocation of CSS varies across states, what you have mentioned, with some states receiving lower amounts. You have cited the examples, also Kerala is one of them. There are also discrepancy between budgeted and actual CSS flows to some states. That has to be looked into in a very detailed way, this discrepancies. There is additional burden on the state to fund these schemes after the change in funding ratios between the union and state governments. This is another major concern which Kerala state is facing, additional burden on the state. Then which on the schemes which we don't have a say even. What is decided by the center and dropped to actually it is being dropped to the state, and we have to accept it. The authors raise concerns about the one-size-fits-all approach of CSS, which may not address the specific development needs of states and may not lead to excessive central control over state finances, and may lead to excessive central control over state finances. This is one area of concern. And one I want to mention about something about the statutory grants. What now happened is that when they, regarding the statutory grants, when in the devolution norms itself, there will be some norms. According to the terms of reference, there will be some norms that the states has to follow. But what is happening now is that, what we happened now recently is that for the 15th Finance Commission grant, now we are in the 16th flow devolution, and now the condition for the 15th Finance Commission grant is fixed. It was not there. This condition was not there earlier when they fixed the devolution for that. Is one thing is that Ministry of Panchayat Raj, the ministries are involving in that. They are issuing orders on that regarding the devolution, statutory devolution also. Ministry of Panchayat Raj, letter number FNO 15-1 FC dated 11/5/23 has directed the unspent balance of 14th Finance Commission grant should not exceed 10% of the first installment of the 15th Commission grant that is yet to be released as a precondition for the release of current year's installment. So all they are considering the 14th grant, 15th grant, and these are all cannot be allowed, especially in the statutory devolution of the and that was not in the original guidelines also. This is creating a lot of issues, not only for Kerala, for other states also. And they're deciding on the new commission is deciding on the earlier devolution. That is not, that cannot be allowed if it is not a precondition. Recently, yeah. It is learned that as much as, and I am not going to the figures now, and not only that, the 15th Finance Commission has made a significant departure from the previous Central Finance Commissions in its recommendations, particularly in urban areas. They have given a lot of conditionalities and tight nature of funding like that. The 14th Finance, I will cite an example. The 14th Finance Commission gave the bulk of funds as basic grant and allowed all expenses related to basic civic services, including maintenance of community assets and roads, both rural and urban. But the 15th Finance Commission has made all grants to million plus cities and 60, all grants to million plus cities and 60% of grants to other cities and rural local bodies conditional. This is the deviation the 15th Commission has made. In addition, these tight grants can be utilized only for two critical services, that is water and sanitation, with a condition of 50% per each percent each. So this is a conditionality which is creating a lot of issues in our state also. Imposing conditional ties for grants to local self-governments through the states is not in accordance with the spirit of the cooperative federalism. Levels of development differ across the states, and this necessitates complete flexibility in the use of grants. Now, actually, we don't have any flexibility in the utilization of the Central Finance Commission grant, 15th Finance Commission, even now, when it comes to the 16th Finance Commission also, this will be an issue. It will affect us in a much greater way, I think. Then one other issue is that with centrally sponsored schemes, what the local government is facing is that now centrally sponsored schemes are coming, like Adal Mission scheme, that is, what is it, Amrit scheme, then smart city schemes for urban local governments. These are creating a lot of burdens as O&M to the local governments. But this is not considered, and this is a burden to the local governments now. O&M is not met in that, and also the maintenance fund. We normally we fix in the second Finance Commission itself. Our State Finance Commission has recommended for establishing a maintenance grant. So it is statutory that the state has to provide maintenance grant, road maintenance and the asset maintenance, non-road asset maintenance fund to the local governments. Now what is happening is that because of all these centrally sponsored schemes, huge assets have come, which is required or not required. That is another case of they decide what projects have to be taken. We take up all those projects, even if we don't need it. Also, we are compelled to take the projects. These the areas are assigned, so we have to. That is not our priority. Even if it is not our priority, we are going for projects. That issue is also there. And finally, we end up with all these assets, and the maintenance grant for these assets is not funded by the finance commissions, but Central Finance Commission, but it's the burden of the state, and it is the fiscal space is being shrunk by this such type of, even for the local governments and the state government also. Then also there are, when you look into the devolution orders, we can see that there are so many mandatory and entry conditions for receiving the funds. This is also out of the agenda of the urban local, which are not under their control even, those things. So those things are also imposed to the local governments even as preconditions and entry conditions also. That is there. And in your paper, you have not examined the SC/ST portion, I think. You left out the central fund is also, CSS schemes are also implemented by the SC/ST departments. It's very important also, even for OBC minority, and these things have to, scholarships are coming from there. But uh, yeah, I want to mention certain things about that also. The funding, recent changes in the structure and funding pattern of centrally sponsored targeting scheduled caste and OBCs, it is affected. There are substantial shifts in the volume as well as the nature of financial assistance that has to be explored. Now regarding the pre-metric scholarship scheme for scheduled caste, 9th and 10th, and pre-metric scholarship scheme for children of those engaged in hazardous sanitation occupations. It was earlier 100% schemes. Now they have gone to 60-40 sharing pattern. And when we calculate every year, huge amount, about 15 to 16 crore is a burden to that single scheme. So it's like that. Another scheme is that post-metric scholarship. Even in post-metric scholarship, the income ceiling is only 2.5 lakh, but the state government gives more than that, which is, we have no income ceiling for scholarships here. So additional, but only for the families or the students who have income ceiling less than 2.5 gets the central scholarships. The other children have scholarships have to be met from our state. This is one burden what we are facing. But here what happens is this income ceiling has kept, that also has shifted from 100% to 60-40 now, scholarship. And most of the children are not getting it because of the ceiling limit. But this is not constitutional also. The children has to get, the income ceiling has to be raised because they are, when we look into their higher education status of SC, it is very low. Kerala is, it's higher, but in most other states, the children are not getting the benefits, will not benefit. So this is where this is affecting their progress even. And when according to our estimates, fiscal burden is 65 crore in 23-24 for us. This 60-40 sharing pattern has created, and in 24-25 it came to 73 crore the state has to pay. Then one other thing is that the corporation, SC/ST corporation, received some amount, 49% of their share capital earlier, but they have stopped it. The corporations are not getting fund for lending now. SC/ST corporation is not getting. So this is also a change from earlier this norms. Then certain centrally sponsored schemes are now merged as Pradhana Mantri Adarsh Gram Yojana, SCA to SCSP, with two other centrally sponsored schemes like PM Ajay AGY and then BJRCY, that is Babu Jagjeevan Ram Chatravas Yojana. All these schemes were merged to form PM Ajay. When we analyze the flow, reduced, we are receiving reduced fund in compared to when there were three schemes, single schemes. Now it has been merged to PMRJ, and the flow of fund is also reduced, volume is reduced. And then OBC, coming to OBC also, the central state ratio is now 60-40. This is also creating a lot of issues for the states. We have to find additional funding. And coming to NULM, NULM also, the funding pattern has changed from 100% to 75-25, again 60-40, it has come to 60-40. This is also a big commitment for the state. Then earlier we had, when in the planning commission era, we had additional central assistance for certain schemes, that one time as additional central assistance grants. All these now stopped. Then MGNRJ, you mentioned here, the budget allocation has been tremendously reduced like that. Then And you know about the PMAY, Grameen and urban. It is now here we have clubbed it with the life mission also. The targets are increased, but the amount is not increased per capita allocation at 72,000 and 1.2 for urban. That's not changed. But this is a huge burden to the states. They have to, the state has to fund the entire target of PMAY and all these things. So I'm concluding. I have some suggestions for the which what we have to probe into further is that why does Kerala consistently receive less than CSS budget allocation while Karnataka and Tamil Nadu perform comparatively better? That is one concern. We have to explore into that matter. Are institutional or political factors at play? That we can come to a conclusion only after analyzing it very well in detail. That calculation error, you have cleared it in table 8. In order to strengthen the paper, the authors can consider adding qualitative data. Also, you can have some interviews and FGDs with interview officials from the finance department and CSS implementing in the department office officers also, implementing officers also, departmental level, to understand the budget realization gap. Also, it's important to include voices from local governments and CSS design and challenges in fund utilization. Their voices also have to be heard in this emergency. Then, the critique of the one size fits for model is good. It's apt also. However, authors can suggest an alternative framework for differentiated CSS implementation. We can suggest, if you can, from the learnings, if you can suggest some framework, alternative framework, that's also good. Then implications of the abolition of the planning commission on the structure of federal transfers may be further elaborated. Nidhi Aayog is not doing the purpose or serving the purpose of planning commission now. So some arrangement has to be now. National Development Council is also dormant or inactive. It hardly exists, I think. So there is no forum to raise the voices other than ministries. Then one other thing, new developments coming up is that CapEx funding is coming. Is this system a diversion of the existing way of funding as a substitute of CSS or like that? We have to be alert on that. Implications of shift from CSS to loan linked CapEx funding and also challenge funds are coming now. Loan linked, where the state has to bear the interest. So such thing also has to be as it can be perceived as deviation from the constitutional mandate, potentially undermining the principles of fiscal federalism. This may also be probed into. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Josephine, in fact, now gave many general points, but in addition to those, from a practitioner's point of view, many points were raised. I'll give a very interesting experience of mine as member of the planning board, in charge of plan coordination also. When we get the financial envelope from the finance ministry regarding the possible plan size, there'll be discussion between planning and finance regarding final size of the plan which can be approved. Now, once that is decided, the plan coordination will ask all the divisions for their demand. Now, how much each division will require from the plan. And that they will calculate on the basis of demands from different departments. Departments would have already given their demand to the divisions. And that will be quite ambitious. And finally, the share given to divisions will be much less. And they will have to really struggle to cut the allocation to departments and all. And my story is slightly related to that, but linked to the paper also. The divisions are constrained to ask money, not only for the state schemes, but also they are constrained to ask for centrally sponsored program, the matching grant to be given for each centrally sponsored program. So there is a problem. They will have to either reduce the allocation for state plan for different departments or make adjustment in the allocation to be given to the centrally sponsored programs. So finally, in some cases, they cut down on the matching grant so that they can give more space to the state projects. So this is a problem which you are addressing in the sense when centrally sponsored programs come, they have implication for fiscal space available for the state to make its own schemes. So if the centrally sponsored programs are coming in large number, you will have to have so much matching grant. And if the matching grant proportion, 90-10 or 60-40, all these equations changing, it will have implications for the state plan, maneuverability of the state government's fiscal space available for the state government. And that is the biggest question that you are addressing. In fact, centrally sponsored programs and what center-state relations, basically what will happen to. Now, this question was relevant 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now. But this question itself is changing its shape now. That is the importance of our times. Because now the centrally sponsored programs are changing in shape, structure, etc. So all those things will have to be probably brought into. Anyway, we will have to now invite Anil Kumar. Dr. Anil, you can join, take around 10 minutes and give your views.
Sir, is it audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. First of all, I apologize for not physically present in that program. And also extend my sincere thanks to Honorable Chair Dr. Ken Harilal and Professor K.J. Joseph, sir, and Nida Madam and team of GIFT for inviting me for this discussion. Yesterday, actually, I gone through the entire paper, and I have some concerns and some remarks on that paper that I will present here. In the paper, it is mentioned that the fiscal imbalances are a major concern for meeting the development needs and the implementation of the SDGs. So my concern is that we must be very careful on tying up the central fund or the fiscal fund for implementation of the SDGs, because that is the central government policy agenda is there for localization of SDGs at state level. So we must be very careful on studying and exploring the nature and issues of the fund tying with the SDGs. Then second point is under non-statutory grants, special assistance to the states provided as the fund for increasing the capex. Last 3 years, we see that the union budget provided the capex. So here there are 2 points related to the capex. So one is the branding of it is mandatory for the states to get the fund under the capex only if we implement the branding of the centrally sponsored scheme. That is the condition from the central government. And the second point is there is no formula for or the specific criteria for distributing the social funds to the states. Instead of that, they follow only the Finance Commission formula. The Finance Commission formula using for the utilization of the capital expenditure infrastructure program is not an ideal way. That is another point. Then by referring the study in study of Das and Mitra in the report, the study, it is mentioned that they consider the competition among the states for resources. Once again, I'm reading, considering the competition among the states for resources, untied transfers to the states have to be included. So here, I'm not aware that which are the way the author is following, whether the author is encouraging the competitive, that means the performance-based allocation of the central government policy, or the untied increasing the untied fund to the state government. So that area has to be a little bit clarity. Because that aligned with the policy stand of the state governments also. Then you like to hear the declining in the average growth of the CSS during 2013 is primarily due to the increase of the central sector scheme rather than the finance commission vertical devolution. As we know that the central sector scheme has been increasing over this time. These central sector schemes are 100% from the central government, no discussion with the state government. It is not coming under the fiscal consolidated fund of the state. Nowhere is capturing. This fund is alarmingly increasing over the. That is also the area to be explored very seriously. Then the gap between the actual allocation and the CSS, actual allocation and the materialization of CSS, and you have highlighted some stories, success stories of the Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. So some areas have to be taken into consideration, like as Harlal sir mentioned earlier, that the accuracy of the expectations. Actually, in the plan or the budget proposals, the CSS amount is an expected central assistance from the union government. So we are earmarking or expecting some amount based on the assumptions that much of amount is we will receive from the central government. So before the budget, we don't have any document, any communication rather than the project approval board minutes, PAB minutes. That minutes is not in line with the actual allocation of the fund. So anyway, the 90% of the Tamil Nadu, Karnataka is much better than the Kerala. So we have to explore whether the lagging of the utilization, providing utilization certificates or implementation hurdles or any conditionalities provided by the central government also. That is a very serious area we have to take into consideration. Then the entire study, it's not clear about the way the policy stand of the others. So in some areas, the policy stand of the other is encouraging the performance-based allocations. On the other area, it is said that the centralization is increasing. So that kind of a little bit. That I hope that it will correct in the future paper. Then the Josephine ma'am already raised the challenge fund. That is the area it is likely to be implemented from the central government. The challenge fund is nothing. The 25% of the existing CSS is going to be a saved or pooled fund. Then it will be distributed among the states based on the performance of the states. Completely withdraw from the administrative expenses. This pooled fund will be distributed based on the classification of 3 or 5 regional areas. So that kind of the discussion is going on the central government. Then one of the major concerns is we don't have any platforms to discuss or express our concerns to the union government, because based on the Sarkaria Commission, so the Interstate Council, as a constitutional body, is not being convened after 2016. So we don't have any statutory body to put forward our concerns. So these are some points from my side. Once again, I extend my sincere gratitude and the congratulations for the team to identify this topic. Thank you, sir.
And Dr. Anil Kumar, thank you for summarizing very important points without taking much time. Please continue with us. We are going to open the discussion to the floor. And of course, later you can also join in the discussion. So please.
First of all, thank you for your kind presentation. And I have one doubt regarding that. Like whenever we talk about fiscal imbalances and all, the major criticism we face is that you only talk about statutory funds. You don't talk about grants. Like that grants is increasing. And what I find in your presentation is like the statutory grants are increased only 4.8, decreased to 4.8 to 2.6, but the non-statutory has increased 7 to 18%, right? So that's a huge difference. So while we put our argument on the size of the grants, we may lose the point, I hope. Like even though these grants are coming through the budget provisions, can we really call these expenditures as the state's expenditures or state's need kind of thing? So, like, even though the revenue from grants and aid has been increased, these expenditure are conditional upon some schemes. So whether we could clearly say these are states' needs which we are catering, kind of thing. So that kind of an argument, how we can establish that kind of an argument, other than the size, like the amount kind of thing. That's my first observation. And second thing, the mismatch between the fiscal, like the budgetary provision and the realized kind of thing. That is basically the fiscal marksmanship kind of thing, right? So, I I thought of like this, that when me and Kiran sir did a work on the CSS, we could find that Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and all the highly human developed states could realize the amount which the central government given to us, like almost utilization. We could submit the utilization circular, but we are lag behind this Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So, no, Karnataka. Whether we need the money, that's the question. Like their allocation and our budgetary provision, are they matching? So that can be a problem. I hope so that we have to look into. That's the two things I feel like.
Congratulations, Suma, for the presentation. And I have two doubts. One is you mentioned about average share of per capita CSS to states, especially to Kerala, that is increasing. CSS schemes are mainly it's not solely based on population, it's based on number of criteria. So does it truly reflect this per capita CSS truly reflect the distribution of fund allocation? Second thing is, first you mentioned there is a decrease in CSS and increase in CS. CS is fully funded by the central government. So in that case, whether you check state-wise differences or state-wise allocation of CS funds to state, and what is Kerala's position in that case?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Suma, Dr. Nirmal, and Anita ma'am, for this initiating a wonderful discussion on a relevant topic. So, couple of observations. One is from the overall presentation, it was having a little bit of lack of clarity in whether you are dealing with the interstate analysis and then you are coming to Kerala state or Kerala state specific analysis. That is one thing. And second thing is about you have shown some of couple of ratios in the initial stage of the presentation. So it must be good if you are comparing the transfer dependence and the transfer patterns. So you have the ratios, but I think the explanation should come in the way that what is the kind of transfer dependence and transfer patterns. Third thing is about, you mentioned about the structural changes in CSS, right? So it could be nice if you are addressing the structural changes in CSS and then how it is linking to the resource dependence and expenditure pattern. Okay. Then as Dr. Swati also mentioned about CSS versus central sector schemes. So there, which the point you are raising is high centralization. Is it high centralization? or what are the implications of that is could be clear a little more, and what proportion, interstate proportion, interstate variations in that proportions, and especially if you're concentrating on the state of Kerala. And as Ritvik rightly pointed out, it's a fiscal marksmanship. And as per the latest RBI report, it is overall transfers, majority of the Indian states are coming in the medium ranking states with respect to fiscal marksmanship. And also, with regard to this gap in this budgeted and actual thing, so does it show the extent of utilization of the fund? So how do you explain that? Thank you.
So I have a general observations and some clarificatory questions. One of the things that I felt looking at your presentation is that, see, if the central motivation for the presentation is to make a point that the tied part of the transfers is increasing compared to the untied, and that takes us to the broader argument that the states are losing the fiscal space, especially the expenditure space. Now that is known to us. Now, share of CSS is increasing is also known to us. Like whatever graphs that you have shown, some of it has been shown by Professor Govind Rao in the report that he submitted to Niti Aayog. And one of the reports that I thought you should have read was A.N. Jha's report. A.N. Jha, Pinaki Chakravarti, and they have done very extensive work on analyzing CSS. And now then the question is, what after that? I mean, they have done whatever is possible in terms of highlighting what has been the patterns of CSS. And they also argued that the states are losing the expenditure autonomy or expenditure space. Yeah. No, I'm not talking about state. No, just see, state is only one small component in the entire analysis that you have shown, right? Either you have to motivate it from the state point of view, because rest of it is all known. I mean, in fact, Ritvik and I, we did as part of the Finance Commission work, and where we have also shown some of the graphs that you have shown to us. So now that we know that what are the emerging trends in federalism as far as the center to state relations are concerned and the transfers are concerned, then the question is what next? How are we going to go and analyze these particular trends that we see? Now, even there, I have a couple of questions. See, if you are making a point that the share of non-statutory grants are increasing, if you look at the rate of growth of the non-statutory components, looking at the share of CSS, CSS is not the highest growing component, right? Then why CSS? And their share is not, then two things, okay? You have also done two interesting growth rates. One is before the Niti Aayog, and after that. What did you show? That the growth rate has actually fallen down. Then if that is the case, can we then argue that the CSS is eroding the center-state relationships? Because isn't it then a sign of progressive center-state transfers? But I think that is kind of derailing the argument. If this is the argument that is coming up, then the earlier studies could be contested because of the timeline differences in the studies. For example, Professor Rao's study did not take data after 2014-15, right? Yeah. So what you see is a very different trend. Even if you look at the share of CSS from 2015 to latest year, barring the pandemic year, just compare the initial year 2015-16 and the latest year, the share of CSS is coming down. So then are we not looking at that particular trend and asking questions about that particular decline rather than having this general argument that people have already been making? So I'm trying to make you think from the data, data is actually throwing some very interesting trends. So why are we not exploring those trends? That is one aspect that I thought. Instead, if you are, I mean, see, since this general analysis is already known, I was thinking maybe it would be nice to see, okay, now we know that there are, 80 odd schemes. And the entire purpose of CSS is also that, they rationalize it from the point of view of national priorities and the development goals and so on. First of all, do we know that the CSS are more development enhancing than the untied transfers? If there is such evidence, then how many states are actually aligning with the schemes? So how many states require the schemes that the union government is announcing? And how many states are actually above the basic minimum threshold so that, they may not require. So the prioritization, when we talk about the flexibility, when we are saying that, there's need for flexibility in CSS, then what does that flexibility take us to? Which is basically to analyze that how many states do need schemes that CSS or the funds are transferring in the form of CSS. Okay. If the southern states are not needing at least half of them or majority of the schemes that the union government is showing up, so a state-wise analysis will actually give us a more nuanced understanding of where states are positioned in terms of benefiting from the CSS or benefiting from the national priorities that the government is setting up. Okay, that's one aspect. And the other aspect is actually quite interesting when you showed the actuals and the budget estimates differences. If there is an argument that Kerala's development position is at a stage that many of these schemes are not aligning very well with where we stand, then why are we having a very, very high budget estimates? So that is, I think, it's actually a bit misleading number because either of it is wrong. Either the argument that Kerala is standing at a position where we don't need the schemes is wrong, or we are deliberately putting the numbers high. Yeah. So these are some of the points.
Uh, any more additions will be adding to this utility, I know it. But the title is very exciting title, Fiscal Federalism and Centrally Sponsored Schemes in India, Issues and Challenges. I think it's a very, very interesting, and the point is that you have provoked a lot of people, and that is the purpose of this room. The room is meant for that. That is the purpose. One point which I thought is not, I mean, empirically you have said, you have collected a lot of data, you have presented that, but that's only a starting point of any research. I think that means research has to start now, I suppose, because you have taken an advanced bail over the political economy, but I would rather start with economics. Political economy next steps, I suppose. Then I will like to ask the question, for example, we know that in a fiscal federalism, you are talking about the economic analytical foundations of devolution that we are fairly talking about. Now, the question which naturally ask is, what are the analytical foundations of the different forms of devolution? We have devolution, we know that. There is a fiscal, all kinds of questions are talked about. And what are the analytical foundations of the different types of thing which you are? Now, that inquiry, analytically, I don't want to get into empirics, because if you want to explain your empirics, you have to have some hypothesis. You have to have some theoretical, analytical foundations of seeing your numbers through. Otherwise, you may be, as said, okay, you will be pulling yourself in different directions. So that, where you want to put your eggs on analytically, I mean, you may like to start from the so-called basic Musgravian, your allocation, stabilization, distribution. Okay, or else you can talk, for example, from the equity and efficiency perspective. That's what Java was talking about. It was much more regressive. They are taking that kind of a perspective. Efficiency perspective. You can talk about, say, for example, how does it affect states in terms of their development, their growth? Or how does it help in terms of facilitating what is called finance commission function in terms of ensuring basic minimum public goods across? Now, after all,
why this different? And then when you talk about particularly these, you are focused on center. I'm not talking about devolution question. I'm talking about the one particular form of devolution in terms of centrally sponsored schemes, centrally sponsored programs. There you can look at that. And there again, the question is that when the whole idea was conceived, the context was very different. We are talking about not only the fiscal federalism itself was a dynamic thing, and the devolution itself underlying, that's also have been underlying, the context has been underlying and have been has undergone changes. Then you may be able to articulate the kind of the relevance of what has been done, what is being done, and what ought to be done. Then you maybe even ask the question whether it will be whether the manner in which it is being implemented is adding to the fiscal stress of the state. In fact, there are instances, anecdotal evidence. In fact, Madam will tell you that some of the programs are actually it added to your pressure, some of the things. So does it add to the fiscal health of the state, or it actually leads to? So what I'm trying to say is that, and in terms of, okay, I don't want to get into that. The point I'm trying to say is that have an analytical thing that helps you, because with that you pose some question. Because now this is only a kind of a report. You have presented some excellent data, and I think I will say that if you want to have the entitlement to give this title, then you need to travel a little bit more. And that, I think there is a lot is already written. Not a lot is not written. I think there is some available literature, and that literature provides you enough insights in terms of articulating it. And with that articulation, you pose the question, because it's actually not, you are not actually raised. Of course, some of the very interesting practical questions are asked, very important, but practical questions are very useful. But I think to kind of place it in a more analytical way, I think you have to have a critical look at, you have not really looked at any of those studies very critically, and what was missing there, and where you are really adding to the stock of knowledge that we have. I think to my mind, two papers only coming to this, only Gondrao Sab and the only two papers are coming to my mind. Otherwise, all general thing. And take that papers very carefully, situate in the overall context of the devolution literature, take a starting from there, you will be able to reach. I mean, I think it will be very interesting and timely work, in fact. Okay, thank you.
Said that there is an advance bail in the introduction, where he offered that the political economy questions will be taken up in a different paper. This is what I meant. In fact, no, the data presented on their own raises many questions and doubts. And from the discussion, it's very clear that you didn't really define those questions the way it should have been. Though questions are there, defining those analytical issues and then providing an analysis in this paper itself would have been really more useful. That's the spirit of the discussion which came up. In fact, the point of studying centrally sponsored program is to throw more light on center-state relations. And if that is the purpose, you should analyze centrally sponsored programs from that analytical perspective. Centrally sponsored programs are coming in large numbers. Let them come. But what does it? What are the implications of this for the fiscal freedom of the state governments? That question will have to be posed very clearly. But in the process also, some of those issues which are already settled, in the sense the centrally sponsored programs put together, whether the total allocation given to the non-statutory and non-statutory put together, whether that is really getting enhanced, the flow to the local government, whether it is getting enhanced. That's one question. That's a general question. Apart from that, even if the centrally sponsored programs are increasing in number and value, whether it is really adding to the fiscal space of the state governments. And then there is also this question of the type of the combination, the mix of centrally sponsored programs. How are the combinations selected? There can be centrally sponsored programs which can probably cater to all the states. In the sense, some states may not be interested in certain kind of programs. Some other states may be interested in those programs. Now, if you have a shelf of programs, and from that shelf of programs, if the state governments are allowed freedom to pick up the programs of their choice, then it would have really added to the fiscal space available to the state governments. In Kerala, for example, many of those national priorities are not priority at the state level. But now, since options are not given, the state government and state government departments are forced to go for those programs because no alternatives are not there. But if alternatives were there, probably the Kerala or Tamil Nadu and Karnataka would have gone for those alternative programs which are suitable for their development requirements. This question is important from the point of view equity, etc. Because when we think about the statutory allocation, you have income distance coming in. You want to protect or promote states which are doing not so great with respect to education, health, and all. So from the point of equity, you are allocating more money to those states. Now, in addition to that, when it comes to centrally sponsored programs and then also central schemes, again, same equity considerations are coming in. So we generally complain about the problem now, like income decision is taken. So states which are doing well, they are not catered to. But here, the centrally sponsored programs and other programs also, again, working in the same direction. So you don't have, practically, state government is again losing their options. Ideally, the centrally sponsored programs or center sector programs should have addressed problems of developed states also, like technology, innovation, which will be important for the national economy. And Tamil Nadu and Kerala, if they are keen on taking up such programs should have been made available to such states. Now, the entire logic of devolution, central government, everything, central government programs, CSS as well as central programs, they are all focused on certain kind of equity kind of development and growth is not probably given importance. So there are many such questions. In fact, you are reaching those questions, but you are shying away from raising those questions. So maybe in the political economy paper you will be raising those questions, but that's not enough. Those questions will have to be posed here, and you may have to write only one paper. The second. So
one thought that now, as part of the SDGs, what the national government or also state governments are asked to do is to align much of their targets and schemes, 172 targets. So in the process, what the governments do is also to align much of the centrally sponsored schemes as well. Right. So on each scheme or on each target, we have the grading, achievers and, aspirers, performers, and so on. So,
SDG, again, it's a very bad influence. For SDG, okay, somebody has told that SDG will have to be prioritized. Okay, you prioritize SDG, but the entire budget cannot go for SDG. Then if you are putting the entire budget on SDG, your growth will suffer, development will suffer, and ultimately SDG also will suffer.
true, sir.
Because you will not have money to address the question of poverty.
Yes. So
This
see,
is the problem.
so since state governments can't afford to do that, what they do is whatever the state governments do, they align it with SDG targets. They don't do anything specially for it. But my point is, if there is a chance, I mean, this is anyway, state governments are doing it. And if we know that, much of the schemes, the states have already accomplished the baseline progress, then that is where I think governments could use that as a space for introducing flexibility for some states. As you said, Kerala may be moving to a different set of development challenges, maybe more towards, exactly, yeah. So
We need to really fund our higher education institutions. We need more research, we need more labs, etc. Instead of that, no, we are again putting more money on primary education, which we have been doing all these years. And now, again, we'll have to go to Nidhi Aayog and say that no, we are giving importance to SDG. That's why we are giving more money to schools. Schools, yeah, you have been doing that. No, you don't have to tell.
That is where how us context that they have no, that is the inertia for change. That inertia may be addressing certain interest of certain sections, and that's exactly what the institutional economics people they talk about. So I think anyway, I think interesting.
The
In fact,
details are also important. Some details you presented, and then details Josephine and Anil were
Yeah,
giving.
that's very
Those
important.
details are important when you are placing it in a kind of an analytical context. Like, if you get into the details of many centrally sponsored programs, the guidelines and all, you will immediately realize that you can establish in a very convincing fashion, no, they are not really, suitable for Kerala, and such programs should not be imposed on a state like Kerala or Tamil Nadu. So the details will help you establish the point which in a more convincing way.
Analytically, you should argue why that is happening. So these details which they say, which they have given, it's very useful. Because that quite otherwise we in the academics, we don't know. And that's what they said. You should have focus. You have go and interact with the person who is dealing with the CSS in the finance department. We should do that.
The Jalanidhi project, so many projects, it's
Jal Jeevan
yeah,
Mission.
yeah. Jal Jeevan Mission. It's so you want to respond to the
one more thing, and sir, well, that stability issue of the scheme is also there. One scheme is announced this year, then the next year for something else there. That the continuity and
I O&M, like you have centrally sponsored program coming that will be there for 5 years or 10 years, and a lot of establishment will be made, a lot of appointments will be made, and finally after 5 years, no, they are not there.
It will be a burden.
They are not there.
And it will be a burden for the state.
And all these employees, then buildings, everything will have to be maintained.
So shall I raise one point?
Yeah, Anil, yeah, you.
Sir, regarding the flexibility, there is a provision of flexi fund. That means the 25% they can
Your connection is not.
It's you're traveling now. So.
and not audible.
Yeah. Is it audible, sir? Is it audible?
Now it's
audible?
good.
Yes.
Is it audible? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sir, regarding flexibility, there is a provision of flexi fund. That means that the 25% of this fund of these schemes can be utilized based on the priority of the states. But so many of the states is not able to utilize that flexi fund, including Kerala, because it needs some institutional framework, like forming some councils, representation from the union government, like that. But the provision, the government order is alive. That is what I like to mention. Thank you.
Okay, that's a very good piece of information.
So thank you very much. I think we received enough, and we'll be looking into all of the aspects. But for some comments, I'll be responding, like starting with Josephine, madam. So actually, the idea was also to look into the details of the schemes, and because this getting into this data and understanding the data, CS data from the various sources itself, took lot of time for us, because conceptualizing itself, because data differ different sources, so that is why we couldn't come to the scheme wise analysis. And I take all your points of the details of the schemes, and their nature and change in the schemes, as well as their composition. And also we would also like to take some inputs from the departments, about the practical implementation of the schemes. I feel that we'll be getting more insights, like what prevents the state to take some those kind of schemes, and why we are not able to utilize those schemes. And the capex, so that I also noticed, like that comes in the form of loan, the CAS that also added in the recent years, and that is also affecting the states. Actually, it is increasing the state burden. So we'll be looking into those aspects. And Anil Kumar sir's comments, and yeah, so while working on this paper, I also had that kind of confusion, like because from data tells one thing, and my stand on that, that also take it is such a kind of some studies they argue differently, and some studies that is in favor of centralization and those kind of things. And this Mitra and Das paper which I referred, actually it is about the, because they talk about the states, kind of competition that is happening among the states for getting this devolution. And the point which I took it is the kind of the, instead of the tied grants, the untied transfers, like how it is useful for the state. In that point of view, I have taken, I mean, quoted that article. And the pooled CSS and its performance, that we will be looking into these aspects, details of the schemes that I'll be taking care. And I'll combine Ritik's and Kiran's comments. I agree with that, because in data also, for the, especially after the like Nidhi Aayog period, CSS actually means, though its share is there, but it is falling, because it may be because of the center sector schemes, because some of the schemes have been merged after the because the plan for the it was like scrapped. So we'll be looking into the proportion of CSS to total non-statutory, so that we'll be getting the kind of the trend in the all the components of the non-statutory, that I have not done so far. So that will be taken care, and that is there in the, I mean, the comments of both the madams as well as the Anil Kumar. We'll be looking into that. And Sadi also referred that aspects. And this average, that state average, which I have taken just to see, like, because from the share we cannot infer, because states, it will be different for different states because of the kind of population changes. That is why I've taken into that. And we'll be looking into the differences in the budget and actual. So that will give, I think, because what kind of for what kind of schemes we are giving budget, like what kind of schemes we are getting, so that difference may help us to explain, like why there is a difference in the budgeted and actual. And because for the other states, we have data in the budget documents for Kerala, but other states are getting data, and its accuracy is also, because till now I have some clarification with some of the data which they have published, so I have to cross check it. And I also found a difference in budget document itself. The union government, under budget at a glance, the data given for CSS and centrally sponsored schemes and center sector schemes is different in the expenditure profile. So recently I noticed it, some differences are there, because I was talking to the Professor Amarnath when came in the fund allocation. So in the same union budget data, so we need some more clarification on that also, because that will affect the total CSS amount which we have used in the data, that we will be looking at. Because when we looked in more into the data only, we are getting this kind of discrepancies. So that I will be discussing with Amarnath sir, and will be settling that matter. And Joseph sir, I completely agree because there are kind of, not many studies which have, analytically looked into this, but we have theories and, the analytical framework of the total, the tax devolution as well as the grants. So which is very beautifully explained in both the papers, Govinda Rao's papers as well as Jha and Pinaki's paper. So I'll be taking those insights and will be setting the question analytically and then looking into the data and will be expanding the empirical part of the study. So this starting of this work actually helped us to understand what is there and what kind of data is there and how it is placed, and all these things have helped us to understand this. And the SDG I'm not very sure about, which Anil Kumar raised, because some of the research papers I have read, because they are also aligning it with the schemes are aligned with their spending towards SPG, because it's also a pressure for the states to achieve those targets. So it is there actually some in the SDG literature also, those aspects are there. That is why I have in the settings I have mentioned it because I'll be looking into that. And I think that is tied. Yeah, SDG. Yeah, it is tied with the SDG that is given to the
Okay,
local
so-
bodies. So we take all the points and thank you very much because we have received, because some of the things even haven't gone, it has not come to our mind. So we go to different dimensions. So we'll be really looking into those comments, and we are planning to update this paper and we'll be working on it. Thank you very much.
So we are reaching the end. In fact, no, I should say this, that we are all looking forward to the completed paper. I am personally very keen to see the final product. And in fact, no, it will be useful for the states, particularly for Kerala, for managing the centrally sponsored programs. Because, some of those points which you raised in some tables, like the expenditure level in Kerala being lower, that's a very, very important issue for the government. There may be some reasons now which are beyond the control of the government, but there'll be a lot of things which are within the control of the government. Like the review by the chief minister, by the chief secretary, the planning board, and individual department reviews are all, those are all very important for realizing results as far as centrally sponsored programs are concerned. And Kiran's question, why if it is not convenient for Kerala, why so much allocation given to? That's also a very important question, because sometimes the path dependency is there. The departments, you have implemented a centrally sponsored program. Some allocation is there. So they will continue to demand that. And the divisions, secretaries, everybody, the same thing. So far we have been doing this. So next year again,
So
the same thing will be asked. And in the process, you tend to go the same way. You can, in fact, reorient. You can remove some centrally sponsored programs, and some attractive new programs can be introduced. In the sense, some maneuverability is there with the state government also. In all this, your paper will be very useful for the state government. And comparison across states, that's one area where value addition will come, because some of those general questions, as Kiran was saying, and Professor Joseph also, we have very strong papers available, and which have taken very clear positions. And if you have a point to criticize them, okay, that's well and good. Otherwise, new ground will have to be examined. Anyway, congratulations for attending this paper. We were not very diplomatic in giving our points, and it should be this way. In fact, there's no point in coming and telling, "Oh, great, you have done a great paper," and you are not going to get anything if that's the kind of comments. In fact, all the comments, they've tried to help you by giving this point, that point. So try to make use of that. We will have occasions to again discuss your paper. Thank you.
I think in GIFT, there is a kind of unwritten rule that if somebody has joined for the seminar and did not ask a question, she is not her friend.
That means they have not helped her. And secondly, in the institute, we have five pillars of research. And one of the pillars is on fiscal federalism. And others, one is on public expenditure, public expenditure, public revenue, debt and deficit, fiscal federalism, and of course the foundations of this thing. So she is heading the fiscal federalism, and I appreciate you for that. And then this is the first work, and I encourage other coordinators of the pillars also to follow her suit. So in fact, we all appreciate your initiative, and I think we got a lot of interesting feedback. And thank you all, particularly the discussants, not to say about the chairperson. And okay, have a nice evening. Take care. Bye-bye. Discussants, Anil Kumar, I already thanked. Discussants in plural, not discussant. Dr. Anil
Thank
Kumar,
you.
you know that I have thanked you. Okay, you heard it now? Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Tomorrow
yeah,
we'll.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Right. Yeah, that's it.